When should you take Social Security? This is one of the most important financial decisions you'll ever need to make, but most people have no idea where to even start. So today, I'm going to help you make that decision. I think the best place to start is by quickly addressing four common myths that might lead you down the wrong path. But if you just want to hop right into the meat of how to make the decision, feel free to jump ahead to about the 2 minute and 45-second mark. Myth number one is that I made a lot of money and saved well, so Social Security doesn't really matter. Well, if you're a billionaire, maybe, but for most high earners who live long enough and take the approach we're going to show you here, you can receive over $1 million in Social Security benefits. So it's probably worth 5 or 10 minutes of your time to make sure you get this right. Myth number two is that if you don't start right when you're eligible, you're leaving money on the table. Unless you die the next day, this is probably not true. It might make more sense to start early, but it also might not. And we're going to help you figure out whether or not it makes sense in your situation here in a moment. Number three is that Social Security is bankrupt, so you probably won't get it anyway. Without boring you with all the mathematical details, here are two things to consider. One, politicians can't even agree to cut benefits for people who are 30 years away from retirement. You really think they're going to cut benefits for people who are in retirement now? Not a great move for their careers. And two, have you seen government spending in the last few administrations? Not being able to afford something hasn't exactly stopped politicians from borrowing money to pay for it. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But if you're curious to hear my solution for how to fix the Social Security funding problem and leave everyone with much more money in retirement, let me know in the comments and I might make a video about it. But for now, on to myth number four. Trump just removed taxes on Social Security benefits. Nope, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that is also false. He said he was going to, and the White House put out some pretty misleading headlines, but what he actually did was add a new $6,000 annual tax deduction for people over 65. So, what does this really mean? They say 88% of seniors taking Social Security will pay no taxes on their benefits. But buried down there at the bottom right is the minor detail that 64% of people were already not paying taxes on their benefits because they didn't meet the income threshold. And the new law also has a phase out for individuals who make over 175K or married couples who make over 250K. So basically, for the two-thirds of people who already weren't paying taxes on their Social Security, this doesn't change anything. And for the people who make too much, this also doesn't change anything. It's mostly a very modest benefit, plus or minus $1,000 a year, for people who make a little more or a little less than $100,000 a year in retirement, a relatively small benefit for a relatively narrow group of people. All right, so how do you decide when to take Social Security? Everything from your age to your earnings, your work history, your health, your current and former marital status, and your other investments can come into play. So we're going to go through all of that one by one to simplify it for you and help you make a more informed decision and maximize your Social Security benefits. The main things that will impact how much you'll get are how much you made when you were working and when you decide to start taking Social Security. Social Security is based on your highest 35 years of earnings. Or if you worked less than 35 years, then it's based on all the years you worked and you just get zeros for the others. You don't exactly get out what you put in, but what you do get is loosely based on how much you contributed. The first thing you'll need to know to figure out when you should take out Social Security is what your retirement age is. Some people think it's 65, some people say 62. No, it's different depending on what year you were born. So take a look at this chart, find your year, and make a note of the age on the right. That age will be really important as we go forward. I'll be referring to that as your retirement age for the rest of this video. For our first example, I'm going to work off of a retirement age of 67 since I think most people watching this video will fall into that category. Here, you can see that you can start taking benefits before your full retirement age, but if you do it 1 year early, your benefits will be reduced by 7%. If you do it 2 years early, they'll be reduced by 13%, and so forth and so on. But if you delay your retirement and don't take benefits till after your retirement age, your benefits will be 8% higher if you wait 1 year, 16% higher if you wait 2 years, or 24% higher if you wait 3 years. Do not delay taking benefits past the age of 70 because not only will you not receive any higher benefit, you actually won't receive any benefit at all unless you claim it. So age 70 is the longest you'll want to wait. So let's translate this into real numbers to see how it might play out. If your baseline benefit was, say, $2,000 a month at your retirement age, but you decided to start taking benefits early at age 62, you'd only get $1,400 a month. So a $600 per month reduction. If you waited until age 70, you'd get an extra $480 per month. These payments will adjust over time with inflation, but you're always going to get the inflation adjusted equivalent of about $600 less if you start taking benefits at 62, and about $480 more if you start taking benefits at 70. And the same applies across the board with the other adjustments. So let's see how this would play out over time by looking at how much total Social Security income you would have received by the time you'd reached three different ages, depending on when you started taking distributions. I'll ignore inflation and taxes for now since we don't know what those will be in the future and they probably won't change your decision of when to start taking Social Security either way. Let's start with where you'd be when you reached age 72. It's probably no surprise to anyone that if you'd been taking out distributions for 10 years, you would have received more income than if you'd only been taking out distributions for 2 years. So at this point in your life, if you were to, say, die at 72, obviously it would have been better if you'd started at 62. But what about if you reached the age 92? Well, at that point, you would have received about $150,000 more income if you'd waited until age 70 to start taking it versus if you'd started at age 62. And where's the breaking point? Well, it's typically around 12 to 14 years after your retirement age. In our example here, we're using a retirement age of 67, and you can see that by the time you turn 80, and you can age 13 years into retirement, you've received almost the exact same amount of total Social Security income at the earliest and the latest start dates. So here's where health comes in. How long will you live? You can easily Google life expectancy and find that it's 75.8 for men and 81.1 for women. So does that mean that all men should take Social Security early? No, because some people die very young and that affects the averages. And if you're 60 years old and you're watching this video today, you didn't. So congratulations. And let's take a look at a more helpful chart. For a 60-year-old watching this video today, the life expectancy of a male is more like 81, and a life expectancy of a female is more like 84. So this kind of tips the scales in favor of waiting to take withdrawals, at least until your retirement age. But you are not the average. You are you. And no one can predict how long you'll live, but let's be realistic. We all know the factors that contribute to a longer or shorter lifespan. Have you made healthy choices? Does your family tend to live long? These kinds of health considerations can play a major role in helping you decide when to take Social Security. The longer you live, the more it makes sense to wait until you start taking withdrawals. The other way health can impact your decision is if you're disabled and can't work. If that's the case, you can apply for disability benefits, which might give you a non-reduced even before you actually get to your retirement date. The next consideration that might impact your decision is whether you're still working and, if you are, how much money you're making. This is where they put you through what's called the retirement earnings test. Essentially, if you decide to take Social Security benefits while you're still working and you haven't hit your retirement age yet, your Social Security benefits are going to be reduced and then increase later to make up for it. In this example from the Social Security Administration, we have a woman whose retirement age is 66. They use the acronym FRA to refer to the full retirement age. I've just been calling it the retirement age for simplicity. She starts taking Social Security at 62, and her benefits would have been $1,000 a month, but they were reduced to only $665 a month because she was making too much money. How much money was she making? Only $24,000 a year. The exempt amount, aka the earnings threshold before there's a penalty, changes every year. But for someone hitting their retirement age in 2026 or beyond, that earnings limit for 2025 is only $23,400. Then, if you look down at the bottom, you can see that what happens is they reduce the benefit that they pay out by $1 for every $2 you make over and above that exempt amount. If you in the exact year that you will hit your retirement age, but before your birthday, there's a higher exempt amount and they penalize you a little bit less. But the main point is that your benefits will be reduced if you're still working and earning even a modest amount of income before you hit your retirement age, and then they'll make up for it later. In our example here, though, it took almost 20 years to make her even, and that doesn't even account for the time value of money, meaning a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. or that she might not even live that long. This is not as big of a consideration as the simple fact that if she waits, her Social Security payments will be much larger. But for someone who maybe isn't in the best of health and is still working, it might not make sense as much to start taking benefits early because they might cut them by a lot and then not fully make up for that in retirement. The bottom line is that if you're working and earning more than the income threshold, it's probably better to wait until you hit your retirement age to start taking out your Social Security benefits. Oh, and one more thing, by the way, investment income doesn't count toward your income for these purposes. It only factors in wages, income from the business you run, stuff like that. If you have some sort of income stream and you're not sure if it would count, I would suggest consulting an accountant because on that one. But usually, income from your investments like stocks, bonds, ETFs, or mutual funds doesn't count toward this earnings threshold for Social Security purposes. Next, we're going to dive into how to incorporate your investments and your past and present marital status. But before we do that, one thing that continues to baffle me is that 75% of you that watch this channel regularly haven't yet subscribed to it. So, can I ask you a favor before we continue? If you like this channel and you're getting value out of it, and you want to support us, the free and easy way to do that that would have a massive impact on our lives and cost you nothing is by simply hitting that subscribe button. My commitment to you is that if you do that, my partner Cal and I will do everything in our power to help you become a better investor. Thank you so much. Now, here's where the difference comes in between Fundamentals of Finance, which is run by two experienced investment professionals, and other finance channels out there that might not be. Let's talk about how to incorporate your investments into this decision. Remember how the monthly benefit was $1,400 if you started at age 62 and $2,000 if you started at age 67? Well, then the question we should be asking is, if we started taking withdrawals at 62, could we invest that money and create another $600 income stream starting in 5 years? What if you could create more? Then it would make sense to start taking distributions early, even though you'd receive less Social Security income in retirement because you'd receive more total income. And we know a dollar is a dollar, right? It doesn't matter where it came from. So to figure this out, let's go to my favorite free investment tool, the Portfolio Visualizer. This video is not sponsored by them, and we have no affiliation of any kind. I just think it's a great tool and investors should know about it. If you Google Monte Carlo analysis, it should pop right up. We'll do this in 2 steps. The first one is to see how much our $1,400 a month that we'd get from Social Security would be worth in 5 years if we invested it. And second is to see how much income we could create with that. You can see here that I set the portfolio type to asset classes, the starting amount to $1 since it will let you do 0, and will contribute a fixed $1,400 per month for 5 years, adjusted for inflation since your Social Security benefits will be adjusted for inflation, and we use historical returns, which means that when it does its projections, it's going to be using actual realistic historical returns from these asset classes that we chose. I went into greater detail about what all these other things mean in our video about how to build your ultimate income portfolio, but for our purposes here, those aren't as crucial, so this is how I'd set it up. I created a pretty typical retirement income portfolio. 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and the stocks are split 2/3 US and 1/3 non-US for diversification. This isn't exactly how I would build an income portfolio, but this is pretty standard, typical in industry, so it's good for illustrative purposes. What Monte Carlo analysis does is project out a scenario thousands of times to see what the likely range of possible outcomes is in the future, since, of course, most people just look at the last 3 or 5 or 10 years and assume that's what's going to happen in the next 3 or 5 or 10 years, but it rarely is. So what you're looking at here in the portfolio end balance row is that on average, you'd build up a portfolio of $111,096 by investing your $1,400 per month for 5 years in that portfolio. Of course, we don't know what the next 5 years will actually look like, so if we got really unlucky, like the worst 10% of outcomes, we'd have $94,650 or less. And if we got really lucky, like the best 10% of outcomes, we'd end up with over $124,000. If you wanted to invest differently, you could put in different investments, including real ones, And there's lots of different things you can do with this tool, but for our purposes here, let's just stick with the standard retirement portfolio and the median outcome as the baseline for our income portfolio. And that brings us to step two. Here, we'll see if that $111,096 could create a $600 income stream adjusted upward for inflation, or maybe even a bigger one. Here, I pretty much just changed the starting amount from a dollar to our $111,096. I changed it to withdrawals instead of contributions, and I made the withdrawal amount $600. I also set this simulation period to 35 years, which would put you into your hundreds if you were retiring at the age of 67. This portfolio success rate chart in this context is basically telling us how likely we were to be able to maintain that $600 a month. You can see here that there was basically no chance that we would have run out of money in the first 16 years, which means age 83. 23 years in, at age 90, there's still a 77% chance that you would have been able to make up the extra income and still have some left over, and so forth and so on. The odds are in your favor all the way until you get to 28 years or 95 years old. That means that if you don't think you're likely to live beyond 95 years old, then the odds may actually be in your favor if you start taking withdrawals early, as long as you're actually going to invest them until your retirement age and then use those investments to supplement your income in retirement, which is probably what you are going to use your investments for anyway, I would assume. And that's just with a standard generic 60-40 portfolio, not how I would build an income portfolio. If you use the two funds that I put at the core of the income portfolio that I built for our paid academy members, you'd have had no chance of running out of money through age 87, and two-thirds of the time, you still would have had money left over to leave to your kids or a charity or whatever, even if you lived to 102 years old. So yes, in a vacuum, if you think you'll live a long time, it generally makes more sense to wait before taking Social Security. But if you'll invest that money wisely, it may actually make more sense to take distributions early and invest them for 5 years, and then use them to create an income stream that makes up for the lost income stream from your early withdrawal penalty once you hit your retirement age. Of course, there's risk in doing this, but there's also risk in not doing it. And the odds are that it can actually boost your income in retirement, even while reducing the income that comes specifically from Social Security. Now, that's something to think about. And if you want to learn more about how to build your ultimate retirement income portfolio that's tailored to you and find out which two funds I was just referring to, you can do that by watching this video that we put out a couple of weeks ago. Over 97% of people liked it, so my guess is you might too. To briefly close out with our final consideration for Social Security, let's touch on one more thing you should consider. It's too complicated with too many scenarios to get into all of the details, but your past and present marital status can also make a big difference for what benefits you're entitled to and how much you might get. If you're married, or you're divorced, or widowed, or divorced and widowed, it can get messy with things like, well, if you were married for at least 10 years and you've been divorced for at least 2 years, but then you didn't get remarried and blah, blah, blah. You can see why I can't cover every scenario in this video, but just know if any of those things apply to you, you should look into how to maximize your benefits. And whether they do or not, the best place to start is by creating a profile on SSA.gov. Not only does it let you model out your own benefits, including all these different scenarios that actually apply to you, but it also helps prevent fraud from people who try to apply for Social Security benefits on someone else's profile. If you found this video helpful, please do us a solid and show us by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It's free, it'll take you under 5 seconds, and it will really help Kyle and I keep bringing you the kind of content that can help you make smarter financial decisions so you can work less and enjoy life more. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.